We're back for Your Ears Only. I'm David Alpern.
And I'm Melissa Exelberth with a quote from the news. Unfortunately, that day has come. That was Apple's Steve Jobs keeping an earlier promise to resign the day continuing health problems compromised his role as CEO. He will be succeeded by Chief Operating Officer Tim Cook, but many saw Jobs' instinct for innovation and marketing as irreplaceable, though he will stay around as board chairman. And now this.
The indictment is dismissed. The securing order is vacated. Sealing is stayed for 30 days. My thanks to all concerned.
Je suis soulagé pour ma femme, mes enfants, mes amis, tous ceux qui m'ont soutenu pendant cette période.
If Dominique Srauss-Kahn was a plumber from the Bay Ridge section of Brooklyn, do you really think that the district attorney would be running away from DNA evidence?
And so it was over. Judge Michael Obas last week agreed to let the Manhattan District Attorney's Office drop sexual assault charges against Dominique Srauss-Kahn, but only after he was forced to resign as head of the International Monetary Fund and spend weeks in jail, likely losing his presumed shot at the presidency of France. Then came admittedly more comfy house arrest as doubts about his hotel maid accuser, Nafissatou Diallo of Guinea, began to overshadow the DNA evidence of at least some carnal exchange between them.
And while Srauss-Kahn spoke about his loyal family and friends, the accuser's lawyer, Kenneth Thompson, raised one of several lingering questions about the case. Did it end in justice or favoritism? Among the others, should it have been brought in the first place? How much of his reputation can be reclaimed by a man already known as the Great Seducer, still facing a civil suit in New York and accusations of attempted rape back home? And has D.A. Cyrus Vance Jr. also been besmirched by the proceedings? Should he resign?
To consider those questions and others from the case for Your Ears Only, we're joined again by veteran criminal and civil rights defense lawyer Norm Pattis. His new book is Taking Back the Courts, and he comments frequently at pattisblog.com. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
In your blogs last week, you say Srauss-Kahn benefited from his position and wealth in the end, but also that the case should never have been brought. Wouldn't that have been even greater evidence of favoritism for a member of the elite ignoring an immigrant maid's complaint from the start?
The reason I think it shouldn't be brought is there should be heightened scrutiny of single witness he said, she said cases. For a man without his means, and this case does stand for the proposition that rich white men can't rape, but for a man without his means, the typical response of a prosecutor will be, hey, we don't know, let a jury decide. We've got a motivated victim. There was a motivated victim in this case. I think it's deeply troubling to have single witness he said, she said cases. I do know that a person without his means would have been presented to a jury.
Did his means mean that his defense team was able to surface information about the accuser that would not have, in a conventional sense, turned up?
Almost certainly. I'm not privy to the details of the investigation, but I'm sure that tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars were spent immediately turning over every stone. Most people can't scrape together a retainer for a modest lawyer.
You make much of the class connections between Srauss-Kahn, Vance, and Vance's father. Remind us.
Well, from my perspective, Cyrus Vance's father was Secretary of State. You've got Dominique Srauss-Kahn, former president of the IMF and hopeful president of France. It's inconceivable these people don't move in the same circles. Cyrus Vance was trying to play the great populist by yanking Srauss-Kahn off the plane. But in the end, I think old class loyalties and perhaps the clattering of silver spoons decided this case. Cyrus Vance should not be the district attorney in Manhattan if these are the kind of decisions he's going to make.
Would it have made it any better, any fairer, either way, if instead of throwing Srauss-Kahn in jail, he simply had to give up his passport, prevent his flight, avoiding the perp walk, the grizzled courtroom photos?
Absolutely. I mean, the perp walk is one of the Southern District of New York's best friends. Ambitious prosecutors have been parading people before cameras forever to show that they're tough on crime. In this case, Vance looks like, a kid who can't shoot straight. Is he guilty or is he not? Where does Srauss-Kahn go to get his reputation back was one of the questions you asked earlier. I'm not sure he can get it back. I'm not sure he had much of one to begin with. He sounds sort of like, the great white Lothario. Cyrus Vance certainly didn't help matters any, and I suspect his credibility is at rock bottom among people of color in Manhattan.
False tales of prior rape back in Guinea that the witness told you call extraneous to this case. But didn't they raise real questions of credibility, especially how dramatically she was able to present them? Would they have been admitted at trial?
They do raise questions of credibility, but prosecutors are famous for telling jurors in closing arguments that even prostitutes can be raped. And this is the sort of factor that a jury might have been and most likely would have been permitted to weigh in evaluating her credibility. It is not uncommon in cases of this sort to have both the defendant and the alleged victim have checkered pasts. So, was this case a little bit over the normal line? Absolutely. Was it so far over that line that it would not have been tried for someone else? No.
There's also a transcript of a telephone conversation between the accuser and a friend in jail. Prosecution sources suggest it indicated her interest in exploiting whatever happened to get money from Srauss-Kahn. Her lawyer says that's not his reading. Will her words come out in the civil case if Srauss-Kahn isn't willing to settle and stifle further embarrassment?
Absolutely. Cross-examination about motive and interest in the outcome is always permitted. If she's a gold digger, which is the argument that will be made by Srauss-Kahn's lawyers, the jury's entitled to know about it and to make that decision.
Should Vance resign?
In my opinion, he should. I mean, he looks ridiculous. You ruin a man's reputation, and then you have to dump the case. There were intermediate grounds that could have been taken. You have a double standard giving the wealthy one class of justice and people without means another. How can he have any credibility as district attorney of Manhattan? I was in a court in Connecticut the day the case was dismissed in a he said, she said consent rape case. And we were in chambers. The prosecutor announced how much time he thought my client should do in prison. I looked at the judge, smiled, and I said, I've got 3 words for you: Dominic Srauss-Kahn. Yeah, I mean, why can't I get that treatment for my clients? Because they don't have millions? Because they're not going to be president of France? Because my daddy wasn't Secretary of State and I don't have a silver spoon? It's wrong.
We heard what you had to say about he said, she said cases. Do judges make it clear to juries that a victim's word alone may be solid evidence? Are those words now overweighted?
Well, the law is that a single witness's testimony, if believed, is sufficient to produce a conviction. That is said routinely to jurors. There used to be there's an old provision in Deuteronomy, the 2-witness rule, that used to linger in the common law as to homicide cases where the stakes were higher. I think in terms of sex cases, consent cases, there needs to be some corroboration. It's just too easy for juries to make mistakes.
Norm Pattis is a veteran criminal and civil rights trial lawyer. His recent book is Taking Back the Courts, and you can read his regular commentary at pattisblog.com.
Quote from the news: heads exploding all over Washington. That's the reaction former Vice President Dick Cheney predicted after publication of his new memoir, In My Time, though early reviews found little new beyond snarky swipes at former Secretaries of State Colin Powell and Condoleezza Rice, and even occasional patronizing of President Bush.
Next, tennis courtship, actually, Borg and McEnroe on the eve of the U.S. Open, for your ears only.